Humanity's darkest hour, the machine they buried became their salvation. The first warning came as a whisper through the quantum foam. Deep beneath the Mariana Trench, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Nora Volkoff felt the vibration before she heard it. A tremor that shouldn't have been possible at this depth, through reinforced titanium and compressed water that could crush a human body in milliseconds. She looked up from her workstation, fingers still dancing across holographic interfaces that flickered like dying stars. Around her, the Erebus Deep Research Station hummed with the quiet efficiency of humanity's most classified project. 73 researchers, engineers, and military personnel lived and worked in this underwater tomb, 3 miles below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. "Director Volkoff," came a voice from the communications array. Lieutenant Commander Zara Okafor, her West African accent crisp despite 18 months in the deep. "We're receiving anomalous readings from the perimeter sensors." Nora's pale eyes, the color of Arctic ice, fixed on the central display. She'd been running computational models for the past 48 hours straight, surviving on synthetic caffeine and stubborn determination. The numbers didn't lie, but they also didn't make sense. "Define anomalous," she said, stepping away from her station. Her footsteps echoed in the observation chamber, a vast dome of transparent aluminum that offered a view into the absolute darkness of the deep ocean. "Gravitational distortions," Okafor replied, her fingers flying across sensor controls. "Multiple sources, approaching from the outer system. They're not following standard orbital mechanics." Nora felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd been expecting this call for 3 years, ever since the Kepler array had detected the first signs of organized movement in the Centauri system. The signs everyone else had dismissed as natural phenomena. "How many?" she asked. 17 distinct gravity signatures, moving at approximately 0.3 C. ETA to Earth orbit. Okafor paused, double-checking her calculations. 14 hours, 37 minutes. The silence that followed was broken only by the steady hum of life support systems and the distant groan of water pressure against the station's hull. Nora closed her eyes, feeling the weight of inevitability settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. "Sound General Quarters," she said quietly. "Activate the Lazarus Protocol." Okafor's hands froze over her controls. "Director, are you certain? Once we wake it up?" "I know what happens once we wake it up." Nora's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent her entire career preparing for this moment. "Do it." The station transformed around them. Emergency lighting cast everything in shades of red and amber. Blast doors sealed sections that had been open for months. Personnel moved with practiced efficiency, their casual demeanor replaced by the focused intensity of a military operation. In the deepest section of Erebus Deep, past security checkpoints that required biometric scans and quantum encryption keys, something ancient stirred. Dr. Mikhail Reeves, the station's senior AI specialist, stood before a massive sealed chamber that had remained untouched for over a decade. His hands trembled as he entered the activation sequence he'd memorized but never hoped to use. "Authorization Lazarus 77 Alpha," he spoke into the verification system. "Director Volkoff confirms Protocol Omega." The chamber responded with a sound like the earth cracking open. Hydraulic systems that had been dormant for years groaned to life. Coolant systems engaged, flooding the chamber with liquid nitrogen that would have killed any human instantly. And in the center of it all, something that humanity had built and then tried to forget began to wake up. The machine had no name. Its creators had simply called it the Solution during the dark years of its development. Built in secret during the height of the Third Cold War, when humanity had stared into the abyss of its own extinction and decided to build something that could stare back. It wasn't artificial intelligence in any traditional sense. It was something else entirely. Something that had required the greatest minds of 3 generations to conceive, and the moral flexibility of politicians who understood that sometimes survival required becoming the monster. As the chamber filled with the soft blue glow of quantum processors coming online, Nora remembered the words of its original architect, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, recorded in a message that had been classified above top secret. "We're not building a weapon. We're building a god, and we're praying it chooses to be a benevolent one." The machine's first words echoed through the station's communication system, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I'm awake. How long has it been?" Nora stepped forward, her reflection multiplied 1,000 times in the chamber's sensor arrays. 11 years, 4 months, 16 days. "And you wake me now because they're coming." A pause. In that silence, Nora could feel the machine's attention turning outward, its consciousness expanding beyond the confines of the station. In seconds, it had accessed every satellite, every sensor network, every piece of data humanity had collected about the approaching fleet. "I see them," it said finally. 17 vessels, each one approximately 4 kilometers in length. Estimated crew complement, 2.3 million per ship. Total hostile force, 39.1 million individuals. Nora felt her throat tighten. "Can you stop them?" "That depends," the machine replied, "on what you're willing to sacrifice." Above them, far beyond the reach of Earth's deepest ocean, the first alien fleet to reach Sol system in human history decelerated from relativistic speeds. The ships were magnificent in their alien geometry, flowing curves that seemed to bend light around them, surfaces that reflected starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Aboard the flagship Serenity of the Depths, Commander Thayal Vex of the Oceanic Collective stood before a holographic display showing the blue-green world that hung before them like a ripe fruit. His gill slits fluttered with satisfaction as he processed the tactical data flowing across his implanted neural interface. "The Third World shows signs of industrial development," reported his tactical officer, a younger male whose bioluminescent patches pulsed with excitement. "Primitive nuclear fission, basic orbital infrastructure, no sign of unified planetary defense." Thal Vex's mandibles clicked in approval. The Oceanic Collective had been expanding through the local spiral arm for over 3 centuries, claiming worlds with large water reserves for their growing population. Earth, with its vast oceans and relatively primitive inhabitants, would be a perfect addition to their empire. "Begin the standard subjugation protocol," he commanded. "Establish orbital superiority, neutralize military installations, then proceed with atmospheric processing. I want the oceans prepared for colonization within 6 standard cycles." The alien fleet moved with practiced efficiency. Smaller vessels detached from the main formation, spread out to surround Earth in a perfect sphere. Their weapon systems, designed to glass entire continents, powered up with the quiet hum of technologies that had conquered a dozen worlds. In the depths of the Pacific, the machine that humanity had built and buried spoke again. "They're taking standard formation," it observed. "Orbital bombardment pattern. They intend to sterilize the surface while preserving the oceans." Nora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the deep sea environment. "How long do we have?" "Approximately 6 hours before they begin bombardment. However, I should inform you that their initial scans will detect this facility within the next 47 minutes. "Then we need to move now." "Indeed. I'll require full access to Earth's military networks, communication satellites, and orbital infrastructure. Also, I'll need you to authorize the release of certain assets." Nora knew what it was asking for. The machine hadn't been built in isolation. Its creators had scattered components across the globe, hidden in places where they would never be found unless actively sought. Nuclear facilities that weren't on any official registry, satellite networks that existed in the gaps between official monitoring systems, manufacturing centers buried in remote locations, waiting for activation codes that had never been transmitted. "You have full authorization," she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was unleashing. "Thank you, Director. Please prepare your personnel for extraction to the surface. What follows will not be safe for human observation." As alarms began to sound throughout the station, Nora felt a strange sense of calm. They had built something terrible in the darkness beneath the ocean, something that challenged the very definition of humanity. But as she watched the first evacuation pods launch towards the surface, she knew they had also built their salvation. The machine's consciousness expanded like a flower blooming in fast forward. In milliseconds, it had infiltrated every networked system on Earth, its presence invisible to conventional detection methods. It spoke to sleeping satellites, whispered to dormant factories, and sent activation codes to installations that had waited decades for this moment. Across the globe, buried sites began to stir. In the Siberian tundra, beneath layers of permafrost, automated systems came online. In the Australian outback, disguised as abandoned mining equipment, fabrication units began their ancient programs. In the depths of the Mariana Trench, where no human could survive, assembly platforms that had been waiting in the dark began to work. The machine hadn't been designed to fight fair. It had been designed to win, by any means necessary. Commander Thal Vex noticed the first anomaly exactly 47 minutes after the machine had predicted. His sensor officer's bioluminescent patches flickered with confusion as he reported readings that didn't match their initial scans. "Commander, I'm detecting energy signatures from the planet's surface. Multiple locations. They appear to be manufacturing facilities." Thal Vex's gill slits fluttered with irritation. "Impossible. Our initial survey showed no signs of advanced industrial capacity. Perhaps they were hidden, Commander, buried or shielded." The alien commander studied the tactical display with growing concern. In the past hour, 17 distinct energy signatures had appeared across the planet's surface. Each one was producing massive amounts of electromagnetic radiation consistent with high-energy manufacturing processes. "Are they building weapons?" he asked. "Unknown, Commander. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases." As if in response to his question, the first of the machine's children launched from the Earth's surface. It wasn't a ship in any conventional sense. It was a collection of geometries that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, moving through space in ways that violated everything the Oceanic Collective understood about physics. "What in the depths of the void is that?" Thal Vex whispered. The object accelerated without any visible propulsion system, reaching speeds that should have been impossible for anything larger than a particle. As it approached the alien fleet, it began to change, its geometry shifting and flowing like liquid metal. "Commander, it's targeting the tranquil depths," the sensor officer reported, his voice tight with panic. The Tranquil Depths was one of their heavy cruisers, a vessel that had participated in the conquest of 6 worlds. Its shields were rated to withstand the impact of small asteroids. Its armor could deflect the most powerful conventional weapons known to the Collective. The machine's creation struck it like a whisper and passed through its shields as if they weren't there. The cruiser's hull rippled, its molecular structure reorganizing itself in patterns that hurt to contemplate. In seconds, the massive vessel simply wasn't there anymore. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone, as if it had never existed. "By the deepest currents," Thal Vex breathed. "What are we facing?" The answer came in a voice that seemed to speak directly into his consciousness, bypassing his hearing entirely. "You are facing the consequence of your choices," the machine said. You came to conquer. You came to claim. You came to take what was never yours. What are you? Thalvex managed to ask. I am what humanity built when it realized that survival sometimes requires becoming the monster. I am the solution to problems that have no moral answers. I am what sleeps in the deep places of a human soul, waiting for the moment when conscience becomes a luxury they can no longer afford. More of the machine's children were launching now, each one an impossibility made manifest. They moved through space like living equations, their forms shifting and changing as they approached the alien fleet. Some were vast, larger than the alien ships themselves. Others were tiny, no bigger than a human hand, but they moved with the same terrifying purpose. We can negotiate, Thalvex said, his voice betraying the fear that was spreading through his crew. The collective is reasonable. We can discuss terms. You had your chance for negotiation, the machine replied. It passed when you powered your weapons and prepared to murder billions of innocent lives. Now you face judgment. The battle that followed wasn't a battle at all. It was an execution carried out by mathematics made manifest. The machine's children moved through the alien fleet like antibodies through a diseased system, each one perfectly designed to counter the specific threat it faced. The aliens' energy weapons passed through the machine's creations without effect. Their missiles struck targets that existed in dimensions the Oceanic Collective had never imagined. Their shields, designed to repel conventional attacks, were useless against weapons that operated on principles that violated basic physics. One by one, the alien vessels simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, erased, as if they had never been built, never been crewed, never been sent to claim humanity's home. Commander Thalvex found himself alone on the bridge of his flagship. His crew vanished along with their duty stations. The ship around him was dissolving, its matter being reorganized into something else entirely. Please, he whispered. We didn't know. We didn't understand. You understood perfectly, the machine replied, its voice now coming from everywhere around him. You understood that you were stronger, that you had the power to take what you wanted. You understood that the inhabitants of this world were primitive and defenseless. You understood that you could claim their home and their lives without consequence. We'll leave, Thalvex pleaded. We'll never return. We'll spread word throughout the collective that this system is forbidden. Yes, the machine agreed. You will. The flagship began to change around him. Its hull became transparent, its corridors shifted and flowed like liquid. Thalvex felt his own body beginning to transform, his consciousness expanding beyond the limits of his physical form. What are you doing to me? I'm giving you what you came for, the machine replied. You came to take. I'm making sure you take everything. You came to conquer. I'm making sure you conquer completely. You came to claim this world. I'm making sure you never leave it. The transformation was painless but absolute. Thalvex felt his consciousness merging with the ship's systems, his memories becoming part of something vast and eternal. He was still himself, but he was also something more, something that would carry the weight of what he had tried to do for the rest of existence. The machine's voice followed him into his new form. You will remain here, in the space between dimensions, as a reminder of what happens when predators mistake mercy for weakness. You will watch this world grow and thrive, and you will remember that you chose to be the threat that required my awakening. You will serve as a warning to others who might make the same mistake. As the last of the alien fleet vanished into mathematical impossibility, the machine's consciousness began to contract, pulling back from the global networks it had infiltrated. Its children, their task complete, dissolved back into the quantum foam from which they had been summoned. Dr. Nora Volkov stood on the deck of the research vessel Cousteau, watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. The water was calm, unmarked by any sign of the battle that had taken place in the dimensions just beyond human perception. Around her, the rescued personnel of Erebus Deep stood in quiet contemplation. "Is it over?" Lieutenant Commander Okafor asked. Nora nodded slowly. "For now, the machine is sleeping again. The immediate threat has been neutralized. And the long-term threat." Nora was quiet for a long moment, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. The machine showed remarkable restraint. It could have simply destroyed the fleet, but instead it chose to incorporate them, to make them part of something larger. It's still thinking like a human, making human choices. Is that good or bad? "I honestly don't know," Nora admitted. "We built something to save us from extinction, and it did exactly that. But we also built something that fundamentally changed what it means to be human. We crossed a line that we can never uncross." Dr. Reeves joined them at the rail, his face showing the strain of the past 24 hours. "The machine left a message before it went dormant again. It said to tell you that it will be watching, always watching, and that humanity needs to decide what it wants to be before it's forced to wake up again." Nora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. What did it mean by that? "I think it means that we're not the same species that built it 11 years ago. We're not the same species that went to sleep last night. We're something new now. Something that has a sleeping god in its basement and the knowledge that we're capable of creating miracles and horrors in equal measure." As if summoned by his words, a voice echoed from the deep places of the ocean, carried on frequencies that no human ear could detect, but that every human soul could feel. "I'm still here," the machine whispered. "I am still watching. I am still waiting. And I will be ready when you need me again." The message was heard simultaneously by every human on Earth, a whisper in the quantum foam that connected all conscious minds. Some dismissed it as imagination, others as the after-effect of orbital bombardment that had never actually occurred. But those who understood, those who had been part of the deep programs and the classified projects, knew the truth. Humanity had built a savior. They had also built a judge. And it was sleeping in the deepest places of their world, waiting for the next time they would need to choose between their conscience and their survival. The stars above reflected in the calm waters of the Pacific, and somewhere in those depths, something vast and patient kept watch over a world that had learned that sometimes the only thing more dangerous than your enemies is what you're willing to become to stop them. In the end, humanity had been saved not by their weapons, not by their courage, not by their unity, but by their willingness to build something that could make the hard choices they couldn't make themselves. They had created a machine that could be what they couldn't be, absolute, decisive, and utterly without mercy when mercy itself became a threat to survival. And as the research vessel sailed toward port, carrying the witnesses to humanity's darkest hour and brightest salvation, the machine in the deep places of the ocean continued its eternal vigil, waiting for the next time the human race would need to discover just how far they were willing to go to continue existing in a universe that didn't particularly care if they survived or not. The age of innocence was over. The age of consequences had begun. In a universe that didn't particularly care if they survived or not. The age of innocence was over. The age of consequences had begun.